Yes, let's talk about the morality system for a bit. So the morality system is a Paragon and Renegade system, which has some flaws, but by and large, I think works very well and was somewhat revolutionary for the time. So I think they inherited it from, what was the game they did based in China beforehand? I think that was the one that started it.
Based in China. Bioware did one?
Was it not based on, I'm pretty sure.
Because Bioware did Knights of the Old Republic,
Yes.
Dragon Age, Mass Effect.
Yes, and there was one more game. Oh,
you're not thinking of Shenmue, are you?
No, I'm not.
I can't think it, actually.
But fundamentally, the idea is Paragon and Renegade are, broadly speaking, good and evil, chaos and disorder, good and bad, nice guy and, not so nice guy.
I don't think in the first game it is, but in the other games it does descend into that. So in the first games you can basically do both, especially on repeated playthroughs.
Yes.
And
Well, the revolutionary thing about it is that rather than just having a single axis with good at one end and evil at the other, which you oscillate between, you have two bars and you fill both of them up. So you can be both at the same time. You can be the very nice guy and the very not so nice guy at the same time, which I think is a slightly more accurate and nuanced portrayal of human morality.
Yeah, it's more like being Peterson, or the original translation of the Blessed are the Meek line from the Beatitudes, of where it's more like, blessed be the bridled battle horse, who has restraint but can charge when necessary. If you're filling up both those meters without it being at the expense of the other, then you're able at various points in the game to either use violence and aggression where necessary or be a diplomat. Whereas in the others, I know that Mass Effect 2 still had the 2 meters, but it's harder to fill both up at the same time. You can't do it on one playthrough, and they recycle it at the end of the last playthrough. Mass Effect 3 is 1 bar, and it's just reputation. And so it channels you into a particularly binary way of doing it. And Mass Effect 2 actively penalizes you for taking Renegade, because characters might not survive till 3, you miss out on content, and you get flare-up red face scars, which make you look pretty demonic. So it's like, don't be a Renegade. You kind of steer towards Paragon. And I mainly played Paragon just because I wanted the most content, but there are some fun Renegade moments.
That was profane, you son of a bitch.
No, that's certainly true. I do feel that this system does work well, because the problem with the oscillating button is that you do a load of good things, you do a load of bad things. What happens if you do that in real life? Well, you learn from those experiences. You are exercising the capacity to do good and exercising the capacity to be assertive and so on and so forth. And what happens on a linear bar is that you end up back where you started, 0. You haven't learned anything, you're at square one. Whereas being able to develop both of these bars, it is reflecting that experience that you're gaining.
Yeah, I think that system being in 1 is superior, other than the fact that you would then had to also purchase perk points, which was frustrating for both persuasion and aggression. I forget what actually, it wasn't aggression, it was something else. But the idea to develop both in tandem was much better than things being time-gated off later and certain actions being incapable to do, especially because it gets to the end of 3, for example, when you need to persuade the Elusive Man to basically blow his brains out and resolve it. You need to have done particularly and honed particularly one way of speaking. Otherwise, you are just locked out entirely. And you also need to have picked the consistent one throughout your 3 or 4 conversations with him across the game.
But I think, and I'm somewhat playing devil's advocate here, I think you can justify, to an extent, the morality becoming more binary as the series progresses. Because I think you can say, well, okay, to start with, you do need to exercise both of these elements of your personality. But when you end up in the position that your character is in at the end of the series, you almost have to become something that's larger than life. You have to become the Paragon or become the Renegade, almost, like this mythic...
Great man of history.
Yes. And you can't get to that level and still keep on playing both sides. At some point you have to say, well, okay, no, I have this way of solving things, which I have honed to such an extent that you can look back at my track record of solving this problem, that problem, the other problem in the same way. And that way your threats still carry this knowledge that you're going to carry them through. So that's the intimidation side. And your good conduct is its own reward, because someone can look at your character and say, okay, well, this person is mostly going to stick to his word, apart from a couple of times when they completely break it. So I think you can make the argument that it's more justified there.
So the game mechanics itself, in narrowing you down a particular moral path as the story goes on, deepens your level of investment because you're creating a morally consistent character.
Yes.
Okay, that does actually make sense. I would say, of course, in taking away those options, you reduce the RPG element.
Yes.
But it definitely becomes more of an action-adventure game as it goes on anyway.
But by reducing the RPG element, it actually puts you in a really interesting moral and philosophical position because you are losing your freedom. The more you realize, okay, I need to develop this path to, I don't know, say, to broker peace between the Quarians and the Geth, or to save the universe from the Reapers, or whatever it is. Once you realize that, you suddenly start to feel that actually you don't have free choice.
Yeah.
You're not, as you were in the first games, getting to a scenario where you are invested with the power to solve it one way or another and saying, let's do this. You arrive at the situation you're saying, partly you're taken out of the game because you're saying, okay, I need to maximize my Paragon score in order to solve later problems in the game. But also you're saying, well, actually, I'm being guided down this very particular moral path, which I need to do in order to save the galaxy. And the chains of commanding are very much heavy upon my wrists.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the critique that's often leveled at the ending, which we won't skip forward to, but on a macro scale of, the ending felt like there was no consequences to my actions, but the lesson of the morality system, of your personal moral development becoming more consistent, and then the ending is incorporated with this, but apart from the ending, is that each of those actions along the way to the journey to the end were good in and of themselves. And so it's, even if you're thinking, okay, I need to do this to maximize my morality meter, you shouldn't necessarily be thinking like that. You shouldn't be thinking like a Machiavellian or a utilitarian.
Yeah.
You should be thinking, what is the correct and principled thing to do in this scenario? Yes. What achieves the goals?
And this is why you can't over-gamify the morality system, because if you play it so that, if you build the game so that you have to do A, B, and C in order to do D at the end, then you are going to completely kill the immersion. Yeah. Right? You have to be in this situation to fully enjoy and appreciate the game, of saying, okay, I'm going to do what's right in this situation. And that means having some leeway on the numbers so that even if you don't hit every single one of the gates, if you are more or less correct, more or less in one direction or another, playing authentically to the character as you believe it should be, then you will be able to carry out your will as you would in the end of the game. Yeah,
that's why I'd actually encourage everyone, if they haven't played it recently or at all, to have an erroneous playthrough. Like, don't look up any of the guides. Don't try and get the suicide mission super right, because it's actually, in many respects, it's really interesting to have a playthrough where you do everything correct, you get the achievements, you play on Insanity, you get all of the upgrades, you mine every planet. I've done that, once or twice. But it's more immersive, it's more authentic to disregard the guide and do things not impulsively, but examine the choices in the moment. Yeah, authentically. Yeah, because even if you miss out on some content in the third game, you haven't felt like you're apart from it, trying to maximize your options. You're playing a story game rather than Farmville.
Yeah, there's something slightly empty in a perfect playthrough. When you get to Mass Effect 3 and you've lost a couple of characters who you maybe really like in the suicide mission at the end of Mass Effect 2, that completely changes what the third game is like, because there are people who aren't there, who could have been there if you'd made the right decision. So you as a character and a player are living with the consequences of your actions.
That being said, if you accidentally kill Garrus, go back and restart your save file.
He's the best character.
Yeah, he is absolutely the best character.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.